Hello, NWI! Welcome to Bluer by the Lake, the podcast that explores NWI life through a blue lens. I'm your host, Tracy Martin, and joining me today is Jane Wallace. Jane is the chair of the St. John Township Democratic Precinct Organization. Hi, Jane. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Tracy. Good to see you.
Oh, yes. I'm really glad we were able to pull this off because there's so many layers to this story. Y'all brace yourselves. There's some tea here to spill, and we are excited to spill it for you. So, Jane and I've met in my life, my fast and crazy life as a Democratic organizer and activist and all those good things. I've met a lot of wonderful friends and a lot of great people, but my meeting with Jane is probably the most Dem friend meet cute I've ever had in my life. So I'm sneaking into the legislative update sponsored by the Lake County Federated Women Republicans Club. That is a mouthful of a name. The marketer in me is like, oh boy, you didn't think that through when you were making that name, did ya? So anyhow, on May 28th, they hosted a Indiana legislative update and Q&A, and it was with State Senator Rick Niemeyer and State Senator Dan Durnalk, State Rep Mike Aylesworth, State Rep Julie Olthoff, and State Rep Hal Slager. And I saw this, and I'm like, we're going to go. We're going to hear this. It's a public meeting. I'm just going to go and be quiet, and I'm sitting at this table feeling very alone and trying to keep a very low profile. And this lovely, nice pair of ladies came up and they said, may we sit here? And I'm like, oh God, please I'm just gonna go right ahead. And I'm looking down at my notebook and not making eye contact. And Jane, take it away. You take the story from here.
So another Dem and I were there for basically the same reason. We wanted to hear what they had to say. So I knew that Tracy was going to be there because Mike Ripe had told me that you were going to be there. So I was looking around and seeing who might, because I didn't know you, and who you might be. And then when Mike Aylesworth was walking around doing some glad handing, you didn't really reach out to shake his hand. And I thought, well, that could be my first clue. I don't know. Just might not be anything. But then I just whispered to you and said, by any chance, are you Tracy Martin? And you looked at me with horror. And then I said, Mike told me you would be here. And then the relief, because otherwise, maybe you thought you were being outed or something, I guess.
Yes, I did. And I was like, oh no, this is going to get on What's Up Munster or other Facebook groups and everyone's going to, yeah. So but then I was instantly relieved because I was not alone in this place. And I also had people to react with me to the things that we were hearing because you hear a lot from people who've attended Republican events and in the media about the great divide between the realities that Democrats and Republicans are living in. And I've always thought that was exaggerated because, these are our neighbors. We talk to them. We go to the same grocery store. We wait in the same car pickup lines and get really irritated when somebody tries to jump them. We'll cut you. Don't do that. Don't mess around with people in an elementary school drop-off lane. Don't do it. Just a best practice for everybody listening to this. It really makes us mad. So, but I'm digressing here. I thought that, we all ultimately lived in the same world. But then as this Republican town hall with all these very ordinary, my next door neighbor looking kind of person unfolded, I'm listening and it was just hard to focus because of what the politicians were saying and also the participants. So let's start with what all these Republican politicians mentioned as their, things they were super proud of. That's the first thing they got up and they all spoke about, this is what we did and we're so happy about it. And the thing that got them the most animated, and I'm not making this up, I swear to God, was the matter of horse buck teeth. And I heard that And I'm looking at Jane and I'm like, huh? So, Jane, do you want to take this story or do you want me to
I
tell
thought
it?
he was kidding. I mean, I thought I heard wrong when he started to talk about it. And so I think possibly I will give them the benefit of the doubt, which was the way that they were introduced was tell us about the bills that you authored or that you were part of. So then that's going to really narrow it down to what they could actually talk about. It wasn't like what were you, what were the biggest issues or anything like that. So they kind of contained it to say just so if you only um, sponsored one bill, there you didn't have much to talk about. But Mike Aylesworth had a lot to talk about this one, obviously from more of a rural community. I think the long and short, well, so to speak, pun intended, I guess, the long and short of it is that horses' teeth in the middle grow. Who knew? Didn't know that. And now it's okay for, I think, state racing horse vets to file those teeth down. I'm not sure whose horses they are or which horses, but he was very proud of that piece of legislation going through.
So, this was House Enrolled Act 1490 allows the Indiana Horse Racing Commission to issue a license for certain individuals to provide teeth floating dentistry services at licensed horse racetracks in Indiana, which is yay horses. I'm super excited for you that you have advanced access to dentistry
Right.
services. Um, but for me, personally, I was like, wow, if that was your major legislative win, that's great for,
The
I don't
horses of
know,
the world.
that the horses
Or
of
the
the
horses of
world and also
Indiana or yeah.
the privileged rural horse owners who are involved in that world, which for me feels like a probably pretty slim slice of Indiana's population and certainly doesn't seem to encompass a huge chunk of people up here in Northwest Indiana. Um, and again, happy for the horses, but for me, it felt like maybe there was something a little more impactful that they could have been doing with their time up
Mm-hmm.
there. Um, like maybe increasing Medicaid dental access for Hoosiers who lack that.
People.
But instead of that, yeah, people, not pets, um, not horses, not farm animals, people. I need my teeth to eat. So do my kids. So do you and your family, and every human being that. Well,
Yeah.
let's not go there. There's people that need to eat through straws, but
Right.
so, but it would have been nice if they had been willing to do that. But instead, they were really excited about making it more difficult to get access to things like dental care and health care. So that when Representative Slager got to tout his accomplishments, he was most proud of introducing a work requirement for Medicaid, which he really waxed philosophical about this, and that one really threw both of us. But Jane, tell me a little bit about how you felt listening to him and your sense of why he felt like trying to do this, which as far as I could tell through the apps did not pass yet. It didn't get beyond the floor. Why this,
This
ugh.
fascination with the work requirement and able-bodied people being able to work to receive Medicaid is something that just really does baffle me. I don't understand from where that impetus comes. Like, is it just they shouldn't get anything free, or they don't deserve it, or they're lazy people? This, I guess, it's just the trope that rich people are good and poor people are bad, or I don't even know. But when I start to think, there's never seems to be any follow up questions about this on the local, like on the state level or on the national level. If you're a single, I'll just say a single mom because I believe most single parent households are mothers, and you are required to receive to work in order to receive Medicaid for yourself and your children, what job are you going to get at $7.25 at the, which is the federal as well as Indiana minimum wage, that you're going to be able to go to and not be paying money? Who's going to watch your kids? Like, is it back to the all your grandparents are just supposed to provide that for free or whatever? They never seem to talk about that. What job is there that is gonna? What job are they going to that's gonna give them any kind of money to do do anything with? I mean, I don't understand. And he made a comment, and I was trying to take notes on my phone. He made a comment that the budget for Medicaid used to be, I think in Indiana, 8 to 9%, and now it was more like 20 or 30%, or had raised to 22% or something like that. And I think he followed it up with something like, "And we can't have that." And I don't know what "we can't have that" means. What does that mean? We can't have that many poor people. We can't. We have to pay a living wage. We have to help people who are struggling. We have to. I think it was more that we can't be paying that percentage of the budget to people who don't deserve it, I guess. I don't know. Do you remember him saying any of that?
I remember him. I remember that statement, and I remember thinking exactly what you thought. What does that mean? Because I am not I'm not going to be giving them the benefit of the doubt that they mean that the generous interpretation that you offered. They don't. They aren't interested in making the life of poor people any easier. $7.25 at some point. You're working, if you work an 8-hour shift, you're commuting, say, an hour one way or the other, um, the gas, your car rate to pay for
Mhm.
that gas is right now about $3.25 a gallon. You could easily blow through a gallon on just one trip
Right.
there. You're paying for your child care because if you don't happen to have a mom or a dad or a friend that's willing or that you can trust with your children or is physically capable of caring for them, then you've got to pay somebody to watch your kids. And once all those expenses, your uniforms, your food when you're there,
Mhm.
all of the expenses that are wrapped up in getting you to this dead end, no hope job are gone. When instead, if you had a little support, you could perhaps be engaged in an online training program to get a more important job or a job that's more flexible or fits your lifestyle or allows you to care for your parents and care for your children in the way you need to do. They're not proposing any of those things. They want people off Medicaid. And what he meant when he said that was, we need less poor people.
Right.
But if he doesn't want to do anything to help people be less poor, what does he want? Them to die? Because that's what happens when you cut their access to health care. They die. And I'm not willing to sugarcoat that, and I know you're not either. So if I had been there, that's one of the issues, and I know you would have too. That's one of the issues that I had planned to push back on when they opened things for comment, but it was very clear that they had picked out ideal people to comment. And we'll talk about that in a little bit, but before before we get there, because there's where the real tea is, folks. I want to talk a little bit about um, Representative Julie Olthoff's legislative victory that she was excited about. Julie was really proud of their efforts to suppress student voting at Purdue. Um, I don't know why Julie felt that that was something that's real, making it more difficult for students to vote was something that we should celebrate. But she really did. She thought that was a good idea, and that's a quote. Um, that's another one I wanted to push back on her about. What do you think about that particular one, Jane?
Well, it just, I mean, expanding voting rights is something that we care about, and restricting voter rights is something that others care about. And I guess if you feel that it's because of voter fraud, which time and time again, the investigations have shown that's not a thing. But if you believe it's a thing, then you're going to try and restrict people. I guess you could also ask, are you assuming that because someone's younger that they might lean more toward more progressive, so then they would be trying to, restrict voting rights of disenfranchise others that aren't going to vote for them. So that would make sense as a strategy, but certainly not as a constitutional right.
I the hypocrisy is very
Shocking.
it really is. You just it's hard to know what to say when they say things like this, because I mean, if you say that's hypocritical, if you were not in power, you would be thrilled to expand and re-enfranchise all these students if you felt that they swung in your direction. But the mental gymnastics that you have to perform to say, oh, it's okay to make it more difficult for this cohort and this cohort and this cohort and this cohort, but also make it easier for this group and here and over here. They deserve Olympic medals for this, because it really is. It's just flabbergasting. There's really no other thing to say about it than it's naked partisanship displayed at its most basic level.
Yeah, because I'm not even sure if she ever justified why that was a thing.
No, she didn't. She just said, and I thought that was a really good idea, and then moved right
Yeah,
along.
yeah.
And I had planned to ask her why.
To fix what problem?
Why is
Yeah.
it? What problem are you solving here that can explain this other than the uncharitable explanation, which is what I believe to be the truth, that your legislative agenda does not jibe with this constituency of voters, and so you want to make it harder for them to vote so they cannot vote for your opponent. I mean, that's really what it is, nuts and bolts civics. So, ay. That was which of those issues that we discussed, Jane? That would have been my top one. That one, it's hard to pick. I would have wanted to push back on all three of them, but if I had the mic in my face, that's the one that I would have probably pushed on myself, hoping that you would have pushed Slager on that Medicaid horror show.
I just wanted more explanation. I wanted to understand what problem it's fixing, because if we're trying to fix a budgetary problem, to be so clinical about it is not not very humane, you know. And Aylesworth was probably a little more excited about the horses you know, than the others. So I don't know. So they didn't really go into, like, as an educational thing. I think of what they were trying to talk about was basically a victory lap. And they were, the audience was very friendly. They were interested in just hearing that there was not going to be any pushback except for the three at the table, the three of us at the table.
That surprised me, because so much of this legislative session was unhelpful to many Republican voters in many ways. And and there's a lot of contentious issues that we're not touching on here. I'm going to be talking about those in a later episode, but primarily the tollway bills and the property tax reform, that are unpopular with vast numbers of Hoosiers, and will negatively impact a lot of people. And I'm going to be discussing those issues in depth in a subsequent episode. But you brought up the attendees, and I think this is the ideal time to turn to that, because I expected some people in that audience to be like, hey, what's going on with the tollways over there? Like, are you gonna, is I-94 gonna be a tollway now, Or, like what's going on with my property taxes, and none of them said boo about that. Instead, oh, Nelly, they talked about some interesting things. So, Jane, do you want to start? You want me to jump in?
You start, I'll follow. Where you lead, I'll follow.
Okay. All right. So the first one that kind of, I was like, what? Somebody, when the audience was given the opportunity to voice comments, one of the first people to speak was somebody who was very animated about a potential Muslim takeover of a town in Indiana, making sure that would never happen here, coming in and renaming all of our streets. I was a little flabbergasted about that because there's a lot of xenophobia and racism inherent in that kind of statement, but also like what are they talking about? I did a little digging. I didn't find much beyond an event in February in East Plano, Texas, where a Muslim town was trying to incorporate in Texas. But it's a town about 40 minutes from Dallas. Now, Jane, you had done a little bit digging and talking to your kids and being like, "What the heck are these people talking about?" And what did your daughter tell you?
I'll take a little bit of a step back, because when the woman was starting to talk about it, she said, "I don't want to be controversial," and I was like, "Oh, here we go. What's this going to be?" And she said, and she was trying to dance around it, and she said, I don't want to, I forgot the word I think she did say controversial, and then she said something else. I can't remember. And she's like, well, people trying to move here, and we don't want that here or something. And the panel was not understanding where she was going. And then she finally blurted out Muslim people. And then somebody said, on the panel, we don't have any here, which of course we do have Muslim people in our communities. So I didn't understand. I didn't understand that either. And just the idea that I think there's that fear mongering that if there's going to be Sharia law, which honestly, I'm not even sure. I'm not even going to speak to any of that. But I think the fear mongering and the othering was very apparent. And she was proudly standing up to talk about that. So I was pretty surprised. That isn't top of mind for me. That's not my big issue, you know. No.
And I remember us turning around and just being so flabbergasted that someone would be this nakedly racist. And whoop,
Yeah.
yeah, nope, couldn't care less. Very immune to our expressions of shock and
Yeah.
disgust. Yeah, could not care less. Then, right, so for me, the next one that really I was like, okay, there, Nelly, like you need to. We're gonna have some words in a minute if you don't stop saying these things. This woman stood up and she said, "How are we gonna make it easier for the mentally ill to vote in Indiana?"
Harder.
Yeah, harder.
Yes.
Sorry. Yes, she said, you hear there, Indiana's only one of, I believe she said, like 11 states. My recording of the event didn't go through, but a handful of states that don't forbid the mentally ill from voting. And how are we going to make it harder for the mentally ill to vote? We don't need these people voting. La 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 la. Now, as someone with people with several mental illness diagnoses in my family, but who are fully functioning members of society, perfectly capable of making educated decisions about who represents them in their legislative bodies, I was mortally offended by that statement, and also flabbergasted that anyone in the state of Indiana could think we, Indiana, needed to make it more difficult for any human being to vote. Like there's any more levels of hard we need to make it because and the representatives seem to feel the same. They're like, well,
We'll look.
we have some pretty
Yeah,
strict.
we'll look into that, or I don't know. But I don't even know how she was defining mentally ill, and it really would depend on how she was defining that and what wherever she was getting her information and how they were othering those people. Is that people who take ADHD medication? Is that people who, are uh, struggling with depression or anxiety? I mean, what does that even mean? Autism. I mean, what are they, what is, I don't know. There was no, I mean, throughout the entire event, there was no follow up, to the questions, so I'm not
Yeah,
sure
and they
exactly what
moved
you
right
mean.
past that one.
What's that?
Yeah, it was really fun watching these representatives duck and weave. The more out there, let's put it charitably, comments people were making. And now I'm going to be honest, this next one really threw me. And so I didn't even hear. I can't even remember what the panel had to say, but somebody got up and then, oh my gosh, they started talking about contrails, and I'm like, contrails? You mean the plumes that follow planes in the sky? Yes, that is what they were talking about, and I had to look this up. And it wasn't until I started Googling later that I'm like started connecting all the dots. I'm like, oh, that's why so many, deep MAGA commentators are talking about cloud seeding. I'm like, why are they talking about cloud seeding online? Is this about rain? Like, that's what cloud seeding is supposed to be. But no, there is a conspiracy theory, and I'm just going to quote this from Wikipedia because I don't want to get this wrong. The chemtrail conspiracy theory is the erroneous belief that long lasting condensation trails left in the sky by high flying aircraft are actually chemtrails, consisting of chemical or biological agents sprayed for nefarious purposes undisclosed to the general public. Now, I remember the panel going, duck and weaving that one as fast as they could. Jane, I mean,
I didn't even know.
this is what they care about.
I didn't know what it was. Because I guess it's everyone who had a conspiracy theory got to talk about it, or ask about it. So I don't even know what that one was. So I was like, I had no thoughts, no comments.
How could you? Because it was just like, if you have to leave a legislative session Q&A and you have to Google what the public cares about because it's so far removed from what you care about. And this is kind of what got to the crux of this experience for me, and what I really hoped you and I could dive into for the next few minutes is who who are these people? I thought I knew them. And I'm not saying that to other them. It's because I thought that what I cared about and what my neighbors cared about was fundamentally, at the end of the day, the same thing: feeding my kids, mowing my lawn, living the good American life that my parents wanted to give me and I want to give my kids. But when they're given the chance to say, hey, this is what I care about, this is what they said. So, and they were in a friendly environment. This was their space. They didn't know who we were. They had no reason to believe that there were, three Democratic operatives listening in. So I don't know what to make of that other than to feel very deep and profound sadness that I'm so disconnected from the people that I live with. And I don't want my life to be like that. I like to think of myself as a nice person that cares about my neighbors. I'm sure you do too. So my question to you is: did you feel that same sort of Alice down the hole feeling sitting
Well, I
there?
was surprised that there weren't more people there. I think, what would you say, there were 30 to 30, 40 people there, maybe three of us. And so I was surprised with all those reps that it would have been great if they would have actually had a town hall, to talk to all their constituents and not just by invite only. Now it was open to the public, the the sessions, or the updates. So that's obviously why we were there. But there just wasn't any talk about like how to make life better for, like as you said, for all of us. And that was supposedly what was the big issues of the election, affordability and the economy, etc. And I know I think you'll talk later about SB1 with the property tax, but even that was so complicated and isn't really gonna net a lot for the average person. So it's
And
just
let me jump in here and just reflect really quick that I'm going to talk to this at length with Rodney, but man, did they do some gymnastics on that stage to summon some enthusiasm for that bill. They don't even like it. They voted for it, but they didn't like it. They could not in any way really explain how it benefited
mhm.
anyone. And they had to they were holding their noses the entire time SB1 was discussed. Um,
So it's this idea that you vote for something that you don't agree with, or that you know that is wrong, like what Lisa Murkowski just did with the big bad bill. You know, like you if you don't if it's broken, you do fix it before it gets passed. It's a law. It's going into it's going to be a law. So I don't understand that. I don't understand who it's supposed to be for, who it's supposed to benefit. But when you do other things that take away, we didn't even talk about the education stuff or any, but, or when you take away a tax base, I'm not sure, I'm going to sound like an idiot, so I'll just struggle through it here. But when you make basically municipalities pay for things that the state used to, so that state can say, my budget's, I'm doing better on my budget, the average person is going to end up paying. It doesn't matter to us whether we pay it to the state or we pay it to our local towns and cities. It's still coming out of our pocket. And so that's the idea, I guess, that we're not going to notice, or that it doesn't matter. I mean, I don't want a balanced budget that way. I don't want the balanced budget to happen on because I have to pay more. That makes no sense. And my services are going to get cut, you know. So I don't know who is like I don't know who is like I don't know. I guess they're good, marketers, or people are just so entrenched in this is my guy, or I believe everything that they say, whoever it is, then
I think you're hitting it right there. I think this is we're starting to see that I understand, particularly if you're a Democrat in our state legislature, I understand the need for horse trading. And I'm going to talk to Rodney a little bit about that because getting stuff done in Indiana's legislature is very complicated. And if you're a Democrat, you do have to make some seriously difficult decisions. But these people are not Democrats. They are the party in power by a wide ass margin. They could have gone for the fences. I don't see how there would be any political implications for them for making things a little different in this bill. If they wanted to hold shit up to make it better, they could have. They chose not to. I'm very curious about the decision making
mhm.
there. But I think also the fact that we're now seeing the negative impacts of such deep identity based politics because now even the party in power is falling prey to them. They've got the power, they can do what they want, and they're still making bad identity based choices, even with the power to do things differently in a more sensible way. They're imbibing all of the odd rhetoric, the faulty rhetoric that they know is faulty, and they're enacting legislation on it, even if they don't have to. Why?
I guess we'll have to go to another
And
meeting.
I know. And I mean, so I guess for our final thoughts on the matter, like, I left that meeting bewildered and without a sense of how to fix that divide. Because eventually, these constituents that were there are going to be negatively impacted when their Medicaid goes away. And I know there are people in that audience on Medicaid. I know it. They're going to hurt. When their property taxes are janked, they're going to hurt. When their state services across the border they're going to hurt when they're cut. So at that moment, you'd think would be an ideal point for the Democratic Party to have an outreach to them. But how are we going to build that bridge? Because based on that meeting, I don't know how. My values and their values are so. How are we going to reach them? I don't think this is a problem you and I can solve.
No. But it's the I do my own research. I go to Facebook for my information. So no, anyone on Facebook or anywhere can post anything that they want. There's no journalistic standards for fact checking, etc. So it's just, it could be whatever they want to believe, or whatever, fits their narrative. I guess they look for the information. That's what the algorithms also feeds them. But we didn't even touch on the very last question, because we thought we were going to be able to get one in, which mine was going to be, of all the things that you passed this session, which one do you think will help? Which one are you most proud of that will help struggling Hoosiers the most? Which I was dying to hear what they were going to even answer, because none of the things that they actually discussed spoke to that at all. But that woman that was kind of walking around at the end said, when are we going to get rid of fluoride in our water? That was the very last question. Do you remember that? So that on that note, they adjourned and we left. And I thought, wow, like nothing of like it was just like an air of grievances, I guess. That's kind of what it was. But again, I don't know. You have to think about it. Who were those? All the members of that group? Was it open to the public? Who were those people? And you don't really know what people are like what the general population is thinking, because that was just such a small group, I guess. You know.
And it was definitely, it wasn't curated, but it was, the invitation was issued quietly, and it was a specific cohort that attends that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I do know I'm not going to name names, but I had a friend that went to another meeting like that. And she had a very similar, like, experience. So it's either that, and my experience at Democratic town halls is very different. People come there prepared with hard questions. And
But again, it wasn't a town hall, so it was
yeah, that's true. You're right. It wasn't a town hall. It was an engineered sort of
friendly. Yeah.
session with
Yes.
it was a friendly session, and the people there that were Q&A were the people that asked questions were picked by the moderators. So I guess my take on that thing was the things they were proud of did not have much substance. They didn't have much to say because they didn't really have anything that they could point to that they could really be proud of. There weren't a lot of wins in this legislative session, and there's going to be a lot of losses, and we're going to see them soon. And I guess we're going to have to just think of new ways to reach our neighbors. And I guess that's going to be the great Democratic project, because we're going to have to figure it out. 2016 is around the corner, and I don't want to live like this anymore. So, yeah. So I think that's going to have to be something that we all start noodling on. But in the meantime, Jane, what events do you have with St. John Dems coming up?
Well, we are aligning ourselves with our neighbors in Dyer and Cherville, Munster, et cetera, and supporting what they're, yes, exactly, supporting them. So we're working on our precinct. I would say to anyone listening, get involved in your local town or city, become a precinct captain, figure out how you can reach the people in your community and talk to them about how the Dems are going to make life better for them.
I'm a precinct committeeman in
Mhm.
Munster. Shouts out to my Munster crew. They're amazing. Ginny Dickman Lopez, Jen Dean, Ryan Dean. They are kicking ass and taking names in Munster. And they, oh boy, our town has gone through some interesting changes in our governance, and we're seeing what happens when a purple town is taken over by MAGAs. It's fun.
Mhm.
And we'll talk about that another
Right,
day.
right.
But I can tell you flat out the biggest impact you can make right now if you're listening to this, get involved in your local Democratic Party, because you would not believe how much power each individual precinct has. It's amazing, and it's the best way that you can get out and really see what's going on and make an impact. And Jane, if somebody in St. John wants to get involved, where can they find you? How can they reach you?
So you can reach me at St. John at LakeCountyDemocrats.com. Let me just make sure that's right. Yes, and St. John is STJOHN. And in fact, anybody that's listening, if you're just don't I don't know who to reach out to, you can reach out to Tracy or me, and we'll connect you to your people. It's great to find your people. That's the beautiful thing.
Yes, I will be posting links to fact checks for all of the things that Jane and I discussed today, contact information for Jane, and also a way that you can reach us to if you live in Dyer or Munster or anywhere in the region, and or anywhere outside of there for that matter. We will help get you connected to your local Democratic Party. We all have contact information for each other, and we want you involved, because the more involved we are, we've seen people, I don't remember what Democratic pundit said that we should just roll over and play dead for a little while. No, thank you. We have seen what mobilized action does. It's been 6 months. We spun up an opposition network that stretches coast to coast in 6 months. That's something to be proud of, and we need more of it, because you know what? We've got a lot of time to go. So buckle up, folks. Jane, thank you for being here. It was such a pleasure. We need to get together and do some more undercover work in the future, because it was
Exactly.
fun. Yes. And in the meantime, everyone, please, your assignment for this week is we all need to get some joy in these fun times. Get out, enjoy the summer. Maybe come see me at the lake.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Tracy.
Bye bye.